We spent several lessons on adding and subtracting sign numbers, and now we will move on to multiplication so that we can find the product of sign numbers. Okay, and just like with addition and subtraction, multiplication has its own set of rules that we're going to need to learn. And in order to learn those rules, it's really important that we understand what multiplication is. Remember that multiplication represents repeated addition. Okay, so we're going to look at a few different cases of multiplication here today to understand what the signs mean and how they are used in order to come up with a product. And we're going to start out with the most basic type of multiplication problem that you learned a long time ago, a positive number multiplied by another positive number. In example number 1, think about the problem 3 times 2. Okay, this problem means to add 3 groups of 2. Remember, multiplication is repeated addition. So we're going to rewrite this product as an addition problem, and then we're going to evaluate it. Again, 3 times 2 means to add 3 groups of 2. So I'm going to add 2 plus 2 plus 2. There's my 3 groups of 2. And if you add 2 plus 2 plus 2, you get an answer of 6. Okay, and we already knew 3 times 2 was 6. And this result confirms the first multiplication rule that you already knew. A positive number times a positive number equals a positive number. So now that we've reviewed a positive times a positive, let's start to incorporate negative numbers into our examples. In example 2, think about the problem 4 times negative 2. This means to add blank groups of blank. Well, again, remember up here, 3 times 2 meant to add 3 groups of 2. So 4 times negative 2 means to add 4 groups of negative 2. So we're going to rewrite this as an addition problem, and then we're going to evaluate it. I need to have 4 groups of negative 2. So I'm going to have negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2. Okay? And now when I add all of these together, negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2, I end up with negative 8. So the answer to 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Okay, so based on this result, let's fill in our blank. A positive number times a negative number. Well, our answer, our product, was a negative number. Okay, if you have 4 groups of negative 2, one group of negative 2, another group of negative 2, a third and a fourth group of negative 2. Since all of my groups are negative, my answer had to be negative as well. So a positive number times a negative number will give us a negative number. So in example 2, we learned that a positive number times a negative number is a negative number. And let's see what happens if we switch this around and do a negative number times a positive number. In example 3, think about the problem negative 1 times 4. Well, what does this mean? Fill in the blanks below. We need to really understand what this is asking us to do. If 1 times 4 means to add 4 to 0 once, then negative 1 times 4 would mean to subtract 4 from 0 once. Okay, if you have one group of 4, you're just taking 4 and adding it to 0 one time. So if we make this a negative 1, instead of adding 4 to 0 once, we're going to subtract 4 from 0 once. So negative 1 times 4 really means to do 0 minus 4. And if you were to do the subtraction here, 0 minus 4, we would get an answer of negative 4. If 2 times 4 means to add 4 to 0 twice, well then negative 2 times 4 would mean to subtract 4 from 0 twice. Okay, so writing this out, negative 2 times 4 really means to do 0 minus 4 minus 4. So if we think about this as moving on a number line, if we start at 0 and we subtract 4, we would move 4 units to the left. And then if we subtract another 4, we'd have to go 4 more units to the left. So we would end at negative 8. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Okay, I think you're starting to get the hang of this here, but let's do it one more time. If 3 times 4 means to add 4 to 0 3 times, then negative 3 times 4 means to subtract 4 from 0 3 times. So writing this out, 0 minus 4 minus 4 minus 4. Okay, well, we just set up above 0 minus 4 gets us to negative 8. And then if I go 4 more units to the left, I'm going to end up at negative 12. So negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Okay, now let's look at our answers from question 2a and question 3b. In example 2a, it was 4 times negative 2, which gave us an answer of negative 8. 4 times negative 2 was negative 8. In example 3b right here, well, we just switched the order around and did negative 2 times 4, and we still ended up with negative 8. This means that multiplication is a commutative operation. You can reverse the order in which you multiply and you still come up with the same answer. So if a positive times a negative is a negative, if I just reverse the order, a negative times a positive will also give me another negative number. So based on your results, a negative number times a positive number will be a negative number. A positive times a negative times a positive. There's only one more case that we have to look at, and it's maybe the trickiest case, and it's a negative number multiplying a negative number. So let's take a look at example number 4 and see if we can figure out what to do here. So in example 4, think about the problem negative 4 times negative 2, and also think about how we set up example number 3. If 4 times 2 means to add 2 to 0 4 times, well, that must mean that negative 4 times negative 2 would mean to subtract negative 2 from 0 4 times. Okay, again, 4 times 2 meant to add 2 to 0 4 times. So negative 4 times negative 2 means we're going to subtract negative 2 from 0 4 times. So writing this problem out, negative 4 times negative 2 means 0 minus negative 2 minus negative 2 minus negative 2 minus negative 2. Okay, and remember, you can always rewrite this as an addition problem. This is the same as 0 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. And if you add 0, 2, 2, 2, and 2, well, that's going to get you to an answer of 8. So based on this result, negative 4 times negative 2 equals 8. A negative number times a negative number will equal a positive number. Okay? That's the trickiest one to remember, that a negative times a negative is a positive. An easy way to remember this is if the signs of the numbers are the same, a negative times a negative or a positive times a positive, your answer is going to be positive. But if the signs are different, well, that's when you're going to get a negative answer. Multiplying signed numbers is very straightforward once you know the 4 rules. Just keep track of the number of negatives that are in the problem. So what happens if you're multiplying more than 2 numbers? Well, in example number 5, we're going to practice that. We're going to find each product and we're going to show all steps. In example A, I've got 3 numbers, negative 2 times negative 4 times negative 6. Okay, it's all multiplication, so I'm going to work from left to right, and I'm just going to work 2 numbers at a time. So I'm going to start by doing negative 2 times negative 4. Okay, well, I just learned up above that a negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 times 4 is 8, so negative 2 times negative 4 is 8. Now I'm just going to bring down the rest of the problem, times negative 6. You can write multiplication just like this by putting a number times another number in parentheses like that. And now if we do 8 times negative 6, well, again, we have a positive multiplied by a negative. We learned earlier that that's going to be a negative number, and 8 times 6 is 48. So the answer to this entire expression is negative 48. In example B, we have negative 3 times negative 1 times negative 2 times negative 5. Again, let's work from left to right. Negative 3 times negative 1, a negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 1 is 3. Times negative 2 times negative 5. Now let's look at 3 times negative 2. A positive times a negative is a negative number, and 3 times 2 is 6, so that's negative 6, now times negative 5. And finally, a negative times a negative will give us a positive number, and 6 times 5 is 30, so the answer to this expression would be 30. In example C, negative 5 times negative 2 times 7 times negative 1. Negative 5 times negative 2 is a positive 10 times 7 times negative 1. 10 times 7 is 70 times negative 1. And a positive times a negative is a negative, and we end up with negative 70. So hopefully you're starting to get used to the multiplication rules by paying attention to the signs. Let's incorporate that into the world of multiplying decimals. When you multiply two decimals together, multiply like you normally would and ignore the decimals until the end. In order to figure out how many decimal places your answer needs, you're simply going to count the total number of decimal places in the problem. And again, now we also have to pay attention to the signs of the numbers too. So in example A, we have negative 2 and 7/10 times negative 4 and 3/10. And I'm going to start with the sign here. Let's just get that out of the way. A negative number times a positive number. I know my answer here is going to be negative. Now I'm just going to do my simple multiplication here. I'm going to have 2 and 7/10, 4 and 3/10, and I'm multiplying. 7 times 3 is 21. 3 times 6 is 2. Or excuse me, 3 times 2 is 6. Add 2, which gives us 8. I need a 0 placeholder under the 1. 4 times 7 is 28. Carry my 2, it's already there. 4 times 2 is 8. Add 2 is 10. And now we add 1 and 0 is 1. 8 and 8 is 16. 1 and 0 is 1. Bring down our 1. And now, to figure out how many decimal places we have, we're just going to count. There was 1 decimal in this example, 1 here. That's a total of 2. So I'm going to move in once, twice. And so my answer here must be negative 11 and 61 hundredths. In example B, we have a negative number times a negative number, so my answer is going to be a positive number, and now I'm just going to multiply, okay? And remember, when you multiply with decimals, you don't have to line up your decimal places. We're just going to multiply like normal. So 6 times 2 is 12, 2 times 7 is 14, add 1 is 15, 2 times 3 is 6, add 1 is 7. We need a 0 placeholder, and now 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 7 is 42, add 3 is 45. And 6 times 3 is 18, add 4 is 22. And now we add 2, 11, that's 8, and 5 is 13. That's a 3, that's a 2. And now this had 2 decimal places, this has 1, that's a total of 3, so we move in once, twice, 3 times, and we get an answer of 23 and 312 thousandths. If we're multiplying fractions, remember all you need to do is numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and watch your signs. All right, a positive times a negative is a negative, and now 3 times 1 is 3, 5 times 3 is 15, and this actually simplifies all the way down to negative 1/5. Remember that you can simplify before you multiply if the numerator and denominator have a common factor, like in this example. Okay, negative 8/15 times negative 5/12. A negative times a negative is a positive, but let's simplify early. All right, this numerator 5 and this denominator 15 have a common factor of 5. 5 goes into 5 once and into 15 3 times. 8 and 12 have a common factor of 4. 4 goes into 8 twice and into 12 3 times. And so now when I multiply, numerator times numerator gives me 2. Denominator times denominator gives me 9. And again, a negative times a negative is a positive. If you're multiplying with mixed numbers, the first thing that you need to do is rewrite your mixed numbers as fractions. So in this example, 1 and 7/8 is the same as 15/8. 8 times 1 is 8 plus 7 is 15. Times negative, this is going to turn into 8/3. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. Now that you have fractions, step 2, simplify if possible. In this example, 8 and 8 have a common factor of 8. Those become 1s. 15 and 3 have a common factor of 3. 3 goes into 3 once and into 15 5 times. Now that you have simplified, the only thing left to do is to multiply. So this is what it looked like after we simplified, and now when we multiply, a positive times a negative is a negative. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1, so this is negative 5/1 or negative 5.